Dr. Michael Turner had been working in the emergency room for 3 years, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. When the ambulance doors swung open and he saw the dog tag on the wounded soldier's chest, his stethoscope dropped to the floor. The name etched on that metal tag, it belonged to his brother Ryan, who had been killed in action 5 years ago. Before we dive into this incredible story of mystery, loss, and unexpected discovery, if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to light and ensures we can share more stories that matter. Now, let's uncover what really happened that night in St. Mary's Hospital. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's emergency department buzzed overhead as Dr. Michael Turner checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night in downtown Chicago. The hospital was unusually quiet for this time of evening, with only a few patients in the waiting area and the usual hum of medical equipment filling the corridors. Michael had been working the night shift for 3 years now, ever since completing his residency. At 26, he was one of the youngest attending physicians in the hospital, but his colleagues respected his steady hands and calm demeanor under pressure. What they didn't know was that his composure came from years of dealing with a different kind of pressure. The weight of losing his older brother Ryan in Afghanistan. Ryan Turner had been Michael's hero growing up. 3 years older, Ryan had enlisted in the Army right after high school while Michael pursued pre-med at Northwestern University. They were as different as two brothers could be. Ryan was the adventurer, the risk-taker who thrived on adrenaline, while Michael was the studious one who preferred books to battlefield stories. Their last conversations still haunted Michael's dreams. It was March 15, 2019, and Ryan had called from his base in Kandahar. His voice had been different that night, lighter, more hopeful than it had been in months. "Michael, I'm coming home," Ryan had said, static crackling through the international connection. "Tour's almost over. 2 more weeks and I'll be stateside. We're gonna celebrate properly this time, little brother." But Ryan never made it home. 2 days later, Michael received the call that changed everything. Improvised explosive device. Killed instantly. Body never recovered due to the severity of the blast and hostile territory. The Army had sent them Ryan's personal effects, his watch, a photo of their family, and his dog tags. One set. Anyway, military protocol dictated that soldiers wore 2 identical tags, but only one had been found in the wreckage. Michael still wore Ryan's recovered dog tag on a chain around his neck, hidden beneath his scrubs. It was his way of keeping his brother close, of honoring the sacrifice Ryan had made for his country. The trauma bay doors burst open, jolting Michael from his memories. Paramedics rushed in, wheeling a gurney with a wounded soldier. The man was unconscious, his military fatigues torn and bloodied. Michael's training kicked in immediately as he moved toward the patient. "What do we have?" Michael asked, pulling on latex gloves. 24-year-old male, multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding, the lead paramedic, Janet, reported breathlessly. Found unconscious near the train tracks downtown. No ID except for military tags. Looks like he might have been mugged. As the team transferred the patient to the hospital bed, Michael began his initial assessment. The soldier appeared to be in his early 20s, with dark hair and a lean build. His injuries were serious but not life-threatening. Several deep cuts on his arms and torso, likely from broken glass or a knife, and signs of blunt force trauma to his head. Michael was checking the patient's pupils when his gaze fell upon the dog tags resting on the soldier's chest. The metal tags were standard military issue, worn and scratched from years of use. But as Michael leaned closer to read the information, his blood ran cold. The name etched into the metal read, Ryan Turner. Michael's hands began to shake. He read the tag again, certain his eyes were deceiving him. But there it was, clear as day, Ryan Turner, followed by Ryan's social security number, blood type, and religious preference. Details that Michael knew by heart from having memorized his brother's recovered tag. "Dr. Turner." Nurse Patricia's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Doctor, are you all right?" Michael realized he had been staring at the dog tags for nearly a minute, his medical assessment forgotten. He looked up at Patricia, who was watching him with concern. "I'm fine," he managed to say, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Continue with the trauma protocol. Get me a full blood panel and prep for possible surgery." But Michael wasn't fine. His mind was racing with impossible questions. How could this stranger be wearing his dead brother's dog tags? Ryan's body had been destroyed in the explosion. That's what the army had told them. The official report stated that only fragments of his equipment had been recovered, including one of his dog tags. As the medical team worked around him, Michael found himself studying the unconscious soldier's face more intently. The man didn't look anything like Ryan. Where Ryan had been blonde and blue-eyed like their father, this soldier had dark hair and olive skin. He was shorter than Ryan too, and younger looking despite being listed as 24 on the chart. Dr. Turner, called Dr. Elizabeth Santos, the senior attending who had just arrived. "How's our patient?" Michael forced himself to focus on the medical situation at hand. Stable vitals, multiple lacerations requiring sutures, possible concussion. "I want to keep him for observation, but I don't think he needs surgery." Dr. Santos nodded and began her own examination. As she worked, Michael stepped back from the bed, his eyes continually drawn to those dog tags. He needed answers, but first, he had a patient to treat. Over the next 2 hours, Michael and the medical team cleaned and sutured the soldier's wounds, ran blood tests, and conducted a CT scan to check for brain injury. The results were mostly positive. No internal bleeding, no skull fracture, just a moderate concussion that would heal with rest. Throughout the treatment, the soldier remained unconscious, which wasn't unusual given the head trauma he had sustained. Michael found himself hoping the man would wake up soon. He needed to know how this stranger had come to possess his brother's dog tags. At 3:30 a.m., Michael was updating the patient's chart when Nurse Patricia approached him. "Doctor, the police are here about our John Doe," she said quietly. "They want to speak with whoever treated him." Michael met with Detective Ray Morrison in the hospital's consultation room. Morrison was a heavy-set man in his 50s with graying hair and tired eyes that suggested he had seen too much over the years. "Dr. Turner, I understand you treated the soldier brought in earlier tonight," Morrison began, consulting his notepad. "That's correct. Multiple lacerations, concussion, but he's stable now." "Any idea who he is?" "The only identification he had were military. Dog tags, but they seem problematic." Michael's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Morrison pulled out an evidence bag containing photocopies of the dog tags. "The name on these tags is Ryan Turner. Same last name as yours, actually. But here's the thing. I ran the information through military databases. Ryan Turner was killed in action in Afghanistan 5 years ago. These tags should have been returned to his family." The room felt like it was spinning. Michael gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. I know about Ryan Turner." "You do?" "He was my brother." Detective Morrison's eyebrows shot up. "Your brother? The Ryan Turner who died in Afghanistan?" "Yes. We received one of his dog tags after he was killed. The army said his body couldn't be recovered due to the blast site being in hostile territory." Morrison leaned back in his chair, processing this information. "Doctor, this raises some serious questions. How does a stranger end up with your dead brother's dog tags? Either those tags are fake, or what? Or your brother might not be as dead as the army claimed." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. The possibility that Ryan might be alive had occurred to him in the darkest moments of grief, but he had dismissed it as wishful thinking. The army had been certain. They had documentation, witness statements, evidence of the explosion. "Detective, that's impossible," Michael said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The army conducted a full investigation. There were multiple witnesses to the explosion." "Maybe. But I've seen cases where military records get confused, where soldiers go missing and are presumed dead. It's rare, but it happens." Morrison closed his notepad. "I'm going to need to contact the Department of Defense about this. In the meantime, let me know as soon as your patient wakes up. I need to ask him some questions." After Morrison left, Michael returned to the trauma bay. The soldier was still unconscious, his chest rising and falling steadily. Michael pulled up a chair beside the bed, studying the man's face in the dim light. "Who are you?" he whispered. "And how do you have my brother's dog tags?" As if in response to his question, the soldier's eyelids fluttered. Michael leaned forward, watching as the man's eyes slowly opened. They were brown, nothing like Ryan's blue eyes. "Hey," Michael said softly. "You're in the hospital. You were hurt, but you're going to be okay. Can you tell me your name?" The soldier blinked several times, trying to focus. His lips moved, but no sound came out initially. Michael offered him some ice chips, which the man accepted gratefully. "My name," the soldier said finally, his voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. I don't remember." "You don't remember your name?" The soldier shook his head slightly, wincing at the movement. "Everything's fuzzy. I remember pain and running, but before that..." He looked up at Michael with confusion in his brown eyes. "I don't remember anything." Michael's heart sank. Amnesia wasn't uncommon with head injuries, but it complicated everything. Without the soldier's memory, they might never learn how he had acquired Ryan's dog tags. "The dog tags around your neck," Michael said carefully. "Do you remember where you got them?" The soldier's hand moved instinctively to his chest, touching the metal tags. "These are mine," he said without hesitation. "I've always worn them. Always. As long as I can remember. They're mine." There was certainty in his voice, despite his amnesia about other details. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. The soldier genuinely believed the dog tags belonged to him. But that was impossible, unless something had happened in Afghanistan that the army hadn't told his family. Over the following days, the mystery only deepened. The soldier, whom the hospital staff had begun calling John for lack of his real name, slowly recovered from his physical injuries. His memory, however, remained frustratingly blank. He could remember basic things: how to walk, how to eat, general knowledge about the world, but nothing personal about his life or identity. Medical tests revealed no permanent brain damage that would explain the amnesia. Dr. Santos suggested it might be psychological, a trauma response to whatever had happened to him before he was found. Detective Morrison returned several times to interview John, but learned nothing new. The Department of Defense had confirmed that Ryan Turner's death in Afghanistan was legitimate and well documented. They had no record of any soldier matching John's description who had been reported missing or AWOL. Michael found himself spending more and more time with John, partly out of medical concern but mostly because of his connection to Ryan's dog tags. The young soldier was polite and grateful for the medical care, but there was something guarded about him, as if he was holding back information. "John," Michael said during one of his visits, "I need to tell you something about those dog tags you're wearing." John looked up from the magazine he had been reading. "What about them?" "The name on them, Ryan Turner, that was my brother's name. He died 5 years ago in Afghanistan." John's expression didn't change, but Michael noticed his grip tighten slightly on the magazine. "I don't understand." "Neither do I. But somehow, you have my dead brother's dog tags. I need to know how that's possible." For a long moment, John said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached up and pulled the dog tags over his head, holding them out to Michael. "Maybe these belong to you then," he said quietly. Michael took the tags, feeling their familiar weight in his palm. They were identical to the one he wore around his own neck. Same wear patterns, same scratches, same slight dent in the corner where Ryan had dropped them during basic training. "John, where did you get these? Please, I need to know." John closed his eyes, pressing his palms against his temples as if trying to force his memory to return. There was a man, an older soldier. He gave them to me, I think, but I can't remember when or why." He opened his eyes, looking directly at Michael. "I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more." That night, Michael sat in his apartment, holding both sets of dog tags, the one recovered from Ryan's explosion site and the one taken from John. They were absolutely identical, down to the smallest detail. It should have been impossible. He pulled out his laptop and began searching through military databases, looking for any information about soldiers who had gone missing in Afghanistan around the time of Ryan's death. The search results were classified or heavily redacted, but one name caught his attention. Sergeant Marcus Webb, reported missing in action just 2 weeks before Ryan's death. Michael stared at the partial military record on his screen. The physical description matched John almost perfectly. Same height, same build, same dark hair. But the record was incomplete, with large sections blacked out. His phone rang, interrupting his research. It was Detective Morrison. "Dr. Turner, I think you need to get down to the hospital. Your patient is gone." Michael's blood ran cold. Gone? What do you mean gone? He checked himself out an hour ago. Left a note saying he remembered something and had to go. Security footage shows him leaving through the main entrance. Michael rushed back to St. Mary's, his mind racing. At the hospital, he found John's room empty except for a handwritten note left on the bedside table. In neat handwriting, it read, "Dr. Turner, thank you for taking care of me. I remember now why I have the dog tags. Your brother Ryan saved my life in Afghanistan. He died protecting me and gave me his tags before he died. He made me promise to find you someday and tell you that he was proud of you and that he loved you. I'm sorry I couldn't remember sooner. I'm sorry for your loss. The dog tags belong with you now. Marcus Webb." Michael read the note 3 times before the words fully sank in. Marcus Webb, the missing soldier from his internet search. Somehow, John had recovered his memory and realized who he was. But questions remained. Why had Marcus been reported as missing in action? Why did he have amnesia? And most importantly, how had Ryan really died? Detective Morrison appeared beside him, reading over his shoulder. "Marcus Webb," he said thoughtfully. "I'll run this name through our databases, see what comes up." 3 days later, Morrison called with answers that would change everything Michael thought he knew about his brother's death. "Dr. Turner, I think you need to sit down for this," Morrison said over the phone. "I spoke with a contact at the Pentagon about Marcus Webb. What I learned, it's complicated." Michael met Morrison at a coffee shop near the hospital. The detective looked tired, as if the information he had uncovered was weighing on him. Marcus Webb was part of a classified operation in Afghanistan, Morrison began. The official record shows him as missing in action, but the reality is more complex. He and your brother were involved in a rescue mission that went wrong. What kind of rescue mission? They were trying to extract a group of captured American soldiers from a Taliban compound. The mission was off the books, unauthorized. When it went south, the army couldn't officially acknowledge what had happened. Michael felt his understanding of Ryan's death beginning to shift. So Ryan didn't die in a random explosion? No. He died trying to save those captured soldiers. And according to classified reports I gained access to, he did save them, including Marcus Webb, who had been captured 2 weeks earlier. Morrison pulled out a folder containing photocopied documents. Ryan was critically wounded during the extraction. Before he died, he gave Marcus his dog tags and made him promise to deliver a message to his family. But Marcus suffered severe trauma during his captivity and subsequent escape. He developed dissociative amnesia, couldn't remember anything about the mission or his promise to Ryan. What happened to him after that? He wandered for months, living on the streets in various cities. The military classified him as a deserter since they couldn't officially acknowledge the mission he'd been on. He's been homeless ever since, struggling with PTSD and memory loss. Michael stared at the documents, trying to process everything. His brother had died a hero, saving American soldiers in an unauthorized mission that the army couldn't officially recognize. Marcus Webb had carried Ryan's final message for 5 years, his traumatized mind protecting him from memories too painful to bear. "Where is Marcus now?" Michael asked. "That's the thing. I don't know. He disappeared after leaving the hospital. But Dr. Turner, there's something else. Something Marcus probably didn't remember when he left that note." Morrison pulled out another document. According to the classified report, Ryan didn't just save Marcus's life. He saved 5 soldiers that night. And his final words, the message he wanted delivered to his family, it wasn't what Marcus wrote in that note. Michael's hands trembled as he took the document. What did he say? He said, "Tell my little brother Michael that I kept my promise. I'm coming home, just not the way we planned." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Ryan had kept his promise from their last phone call. He had come home, in the form of his message, his dog tags, and the knowledge that he had died saving others. 6 months later, Michael stood at Arlington National Cemetery, watching as Ryan's name was added to the memorial wall. Thanks to the information provided by Marcus Webb and Detective Morrison's investigation, the Army had finally acknowledged Ryan's heroic actions in Afghanistan. Marcus stood beside him, clean and sober after months of treatment at a VA hospital. The two men had become unlikely friends, bonded by their shared connection to Ryan and their mutual desire to honor his memory. "He would be proud of you," Marcus said quietly, watching as the engraver carefully etched Ryan's name into the black granite. "He'd be proud of you too," Michael replied. "You kept your promise, even when you couldn't remember making it." Marcus nodded, touching the new dog tags around his neck, his own tags, finally returned to him after years of bureaucratic confusion. Some promises are so important, they survive even when everything else is lost. As they walked away from the memorial, Michael felt a sense of closure he hadn't experienced since receiving news of Ryan's death. His brother hadn't died in a random explosion. He had died a hero, saving the lives of fellow soldiers. And through Marcus Webb's mysterious journey from trauma to recovery, Ryan had finally kept his promise to come home. The story of the lost soldier doctor had become something more than a medical mystery. It was a testament to the bonds of brotherhood that survive even death, and the power of promises that transcend time and trauma. Sometimes the most important stories are the ones that take years to fully unfold, carried by wounded soldiers who don't even remember they have a story to tell. But when those stories finally surface, they remind us that heroes come in many forms. Some wearing uniforms in foreign lands, others wearing scrubs in hospital emergency rooms, and some carrying the memories of both.